Welcome back to Talk Tickers. We typically dive deep into earnings calls, but some pretty significant news just dropped that we can't ignore.
Yeah, it's definitely a little different than our usual deep dives, but this news is pretty major for the EV market, and, we have to talk about it.
Absolutely. We're talking about Tesla, and for the first time in over a decade, they've actually reported a drop in their annual deliveries.
Yeah, it's a pretty big development because Tesla has always been seen as like the leader for growth in the EV market. They consistently beat expectations year after year.
So let's get right into those numbers. What's the situation?
Well, Tesla's global deliveries, they dipped by 1.1% in 2024. And that makes it their first year-over-year decline in a very long time. So on the surface, it seems like a pretty small dip, but for a company that's used to like massive growth, it's a pretty noticeable change.
Now, they did have a record-breaking fourth quarter, right?
Good.
Over 495,000 vehicles delivered. Why wasn't that enough to kind of balance things out and keep that growth going?
It seems like the first half of the year was just really slow for them. And there are a couple big factors at play here. And I think the one that stands out the most is the increase in competition.
Yeah, it seems like every car company is jumping on board with EVs now.
Exactly. Tesla's not the only option anymore. Established companies like Volkswagen are really pushing to expand their electric vehicle lines. And then you have, newer companies like BYD from China that are also making a huge impact. Actually, BYD ended up selling more EVs globally in 2024 than Tesla, if you include their hybrid models.
Wow, okay, so that's a pretty clear sign that the whole landscape of the EV market is changing fast.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually leads us to another factor that's likely affecting Tesla sales. Their models are getting a bit older.
Yeah, the Model 3 and Model Y are still super popular, but it feels like they've been around forever.
Exactly. Tesla is leaning pretty hard on those models, while their newer offerings, like the Cybertruck, haven't really taken off yet. Some analysts are even saying there's demand weakness, which basically means people just aren't as excited about it compared to Tesla's older models.
And to try to counter that, Tesla's been doing a lot of price cuts and offering more incentives.
Right. It's a way to boost sales in the short term, but it definitely cuts into those, famously high profit margins that they're known for. So they're walking a bit of a tightrope there.
Yeah, and on top of all of that, we're dealing with a kind of uncertain global economy. With rising interest rates and everything, it's definitely not encouraging people to buy expensive things like electric cars.
Yeah, especially because, EVs are still generally more expensive than gas-powered cars.
Yeah.
So all these factors together, the competition, the older models, the prices, and the whole global economic situation, they're making things pretty tough for Tesla.
It definitely sounds like a tricky situation. But how's Tesla been doing in China, specifically? China's EV market is huge, right?
Yeah, that's one of the bright spots for Tesla. So while their global sales went down, they actually had an 8.8% increase in China, and they hit a record high with over 657,000 cars sold there in 2024.
So China is proving to be a pretty good market for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it shows just how important China is to Tesla's plans for growth going forward. It'll be really interesting to see how they build on that success in China.
With all this going on, what's Wall Street's opinion on Tesla's situation? Are investors panicking?
Actually, it doesn't seem like it. Most analysts are still optimistic about Tesla in the long run, and they're predicting a rebound in 2025.
Interesting, because Tesla's stock actually surged over 50% this past year, especially after Donald Trump got elected.
That's true. It seems like investors are betting that the new administration will be more favorable towards Tesla, especially with their self-driving technology and maybe even relaxing some regulations on EVs.
It's a pretty interesting situation.
Yeah.
Investors are feeling good about the future, but sales are declining. It's like they're expecting some big changes to happen.
And, sometimes those big bets really pay off. Speaking of big bets, why don't we switch gears and move to our favorite segment, where we get a little speculative.
That's right. It's time for This Is Not Financial Advice, where we come up with some crazy but maybe profitable trade ideas. And today, of course, we're focusing on Tesla.
Let's hear it. What kind of Tesla trade are you thinking about?
Well, with so many investors betting against Tesla right now, I'm thinking we could play around with a potential short squeeze.
A short squeeze on Tesla, huh? That could be interesting. Tell me more.
So imagine Tesla announces some groundbreaking new product, or maybe they land a huge partnership, or there's a big regulatory change that benefits them. And, any of those things could really make their stock price go through the roof.
Right, and that's where the short squeeze comes in. All those investors that were betting against Tesla, they'd have to scramble to cover their positions, which would push the price up even more. It can get kind of crazy.
Exactly. So how do we as like everyday investors get in on that action?
Well, there's this strategy called a put spread that could work really well here. Basically, it lets you potentially profit from a price jump while also limiting how much you could lose.
Okay, I'm listening.
All right. So with a put spread, you're buying and selling put options at different prices. So first, you'd sell a put option, that's what they call out of the money, which means the strike price is lower than the current stock price. So you're essentially betting that the stock won't fall below that price.
Got it. And what happens if the squeeze actually happens and the price goes up?
Well, in that case, the put option you sold becomes worthless and you keep the premium you got for selling it. But here's the important part to protect yourself. If things don't go as planned, you also buy another put option that's even further out of the money.
So that second put option basically acts as like insurance, just in case Tesla stock takes a dive instead of going up.
Exactly. If for some reason the price drops, that second put option will become more valuable, which can help offset any losses from the first put option you sold. It's like a way to balance the risk while still getting a chance to benefit from a short squeeze.
That's a pretty clever strategy.
Yeah.
But Tesla's stock is known for being pretty volatile. Like just one of Elon Musk's tweets can cause huge price swings.
Yeah, that's true. Timing is super important with this kind of trade. You got to catch the wave at the right moment. And trying to predict what the market is going to do is never a sure thing. There are just too many factors that could affect things.
Like how successful the new product or partnership actually is, how quickly regulations change, and of course, just the overall market conditions.
Exactly. This is definitely a high risk, high reward kind of play. It's not for the faint of heart, but that's also what makes it exciting.
I hear that. But it goes without saying, this is not financial advice. It's just a fun thought experiment for our listeners.
Right. Everyone has a different level of risk they're comfortable with, and they have different investment goals. It's crucial to do your own research and make the decisions that are best for your own situation.
So let's step back from our little brainstorming session for a second and talk about the bigger picture here. Tesla's sales dip in 2024 really shows how complicated the EV market is. It's not just a one-company show anymore.
Totally. We're seeing the whole industry shift as big car companies and ambitious newcomers enter the game. Tesla definitely still has some advantages, like they're a well-known brand, they've got advanced technology, and that big supercharger network is a plus. But their competitors are getting better quickly, and they're playing hard.
And that price war we talked about earlier in China is a great example. BYD is really putting the pressure on Tesla with their more affordable cars, which is forcing Tesla to change their pricing strategies. It's like a chess match. It's pretty interesting to watch.
It really is. Tesla was the company that shook up the whole car industry, and now they're the ones being disrupted. They're going to have to adapt and come up with new things to stay ahead.
So are they going to stick with their luxury image and focus on really high-end cars and self-driving technology? Or are they going to try and become more mainstream and compete directly with companies like BYD and Volkswagen on price?
And, of course, you can never forget about Elon Musk. He's totally unpredictable, which makes things even more interesting. One tweet from him can move the whole market. Who knows what he's going to do next, but it's definitely going to be interesting to watch.
Speaking of unpredictable, let's take this is not financial advice segment to another level. What if we threw in some market structure to spice up our Tesla short squeeze scenario?
I like where this is going. Tell me more.
Okay, imagine Tesla's stock starts going up because of one of those positive things we talked about. And as the price goes up, it starts a chain reaction in the market.
Right, like all those hedge funds that were shorting Tesla would have to start covering their positions, which would just make the price go up even more. It's like a snowball effect.
Exactly. And then as the price keeps climbing, it could trigger what they call stop loss orders from people who are betting against the stock.
Which just adds even more buying pressure.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Those short sellers would be forced to buy more and more stock to cover their positions, just driving the price higher and higher.
And while all that's happening, we're sitting back watching our clever put spread play out.
The profits would be rolling in as the short squeeze just explodes. But of course, this is all completely hypothetical.
And as we always say, this is not financial advice. We're just having some fun exploring how these crazy price movements can happen in the market, especially during a short squeeze.
Yeah, it's a great example of how understanding how the market actually works, like the structure of it, can be just as important as understanding the fundamentals of a company. But let's bring it back down to earth for a minute.
Back to the real world where Tesla is facing challenges and also has some big opportunities in this ever-changing EV market.
Right. The EV market is still pretty young.
Yeah.
And Tesla's still a major player even with all this new competition. They could easily come up with something new and surprise us all.
The story's not over yet, and we'll be following it closely. So before we wrap up, any final thoughts on this whole Tesla saga? What should our listeners be keeping an eye on in the next few months?
I'm really curious to see what happens with their profit margins, with all these price cuts to stay competitive. I wonder how that'll affect their bottom line.
Yeah, that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Will they be able to stay profitable while dealing with all this new competition? It's going to be interesting. I'm also interested to see what they come up with next, product-wise.
Right. Like, will the Cybertruck actually live up to all the hype? Or are they going to have to come up with something completely new to really stay on top?
And what about their self-driving technology? Do you think fully autonomous cars are actually going to happen soon, or is that still way off in the future?
Yeah, those are the big questions. And the answers are probably going to determine what happens with Tesla over the next few years.
Tesla always keeps things interesting, that's for sure. We'll definitely have a lot more to talk about on future episodes as this all plays out.
Absolutely. This has been a really interesting look at how Tesla's been doing and how the whole EV market is changing. Thanks for joining us on Talk Tickers, where we break down the numbers and try to figure out what's going on in the world of finance.
And just a reminder, all those trade ideas we talked about, especially in our This Is Not Financial Advice segment, were just hypothetical, just for fun.
We're definitely not financial advisors. Any investment decisions you make should be based on your own research and what's right for you.
So until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and happy investing, everyone.